and we are live and recording the Sales Enablement webinar all around enabling and empowering your sales force with social selling. So, friends, really happy you can join us today. I'm so excited to talk about this topic because all of the latest kind of buzz around the sales industry, it's been around social selling, but it's finally starting to make an impact. And who better to join us than one of the biggest authorities and one of the best voices in this industry, which is Brendan Cornoyer. Brendan, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Amar. That's very kind of you. Hi, guys. My name is Brendan Cornoyer. I head up corporate marketing at Brainshark. Brainshark, we are a sales enablement software provider. We're focused in on sales, the sales readiness side of sales enablement. So we help customers by providing software that allows them to deliver the kind of dynamic, engaging content, training, and coaching resources that salespeople need and sales teams need to make the most of every sales opportunity and every buyer interaction. So we're very much invested in the sales enablement space, and as we're going to talk about today, social selling has become a real big priority for people who are investing in sales enablement. So we're going to talk a little bit about why that is, and we're going to provide some details on how to do that more effectively. So very excited to be here with Amar and to be joining, collaborating with the good folks at Sales for Life on this session today.
Awesome. Thanks, Brendan. I appreciate that. And friends, my intro is really simple. I'm Amar. I'm basically leading the customer success team at Sales for Life. We're the global authority in this area when it comes to creating social selling programs and curriculum that really empowers your sales force to do one thing: deliver more pipeline and revenue. Because really, right, we all got to make our number. So let's do this. I want to start with a quick question, okay? I'm going to go to the agenda slide. We don't need to read it out. All of you can kind of read this, but go on the question box and give me an answer to the following question. If you're in sales enablement, please just indicate yes. If you're in sales enablement, I want to see just very quickly how many sales enablement folks we have with us today. If you're not in sales enablement, don't worry. We still love you. But I want to see how many sales enablement folks are with us. Okay, so streams and streams of you are here today. I love it. Okay, so you're going to be in for a treat. Listen, this is a really tactical webinar in terms of tips and strategies. And what I can promise you is Brendan is going to deliver some key tactics for you. Please take good notes. Of course, it's being recorded. So if you don't feel like taking notes, you'll have the recording, okay? So let's rock and roll and get started. Brendan, the floor is all yours, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, everybody, again, for joining us today. So to get started, we're talking about sales enablement being a priority for social selling. Let's first talk about, what we mean by sales enablement. Even for all of you that are in sales enablement and have just raised their hands, chances are, you may have a different point of view or a different definition of sales enablement at your organization. There's certainly several definitions out there that have been coming out over the years around, what sales enablement really means. This definition here from CSO Insights is my personal favorite, and the one that all of us here at Brainshark are really point to most frequently. And CSO Insights defines sales enablement as a strategic cross-functional discipline designed to increase sales results and productivity by providing integrated content, training, and coaching services for salespeople and frontline sales managers along the entire customer's buying journey, powered by technology. So that's a long sentence, but the reason I like this definition so much is because it really covers all the bases. And I'd like to call out a couple of really important things about this definition. One of the pieces here is that it's a cross-functional discipline, and there are a lot of companies right now that we'll look at in the next slide that are really starting to invest in dedicated sales enablement functions. But the sales enablement function is sort of the hub for all this information that's going out to the sales force. But there's a lot of collaboration that needs to go around multiple departments. And there are lots of other people at an organization that are responsible for enabling sales. As a customer of ours says, it takes a village to enable sales. So this is not, a one-man show or a three-person show. There's people in everywhere from marketing to product development to customer care, all sorts of folks who can be involved and really help salespeople be empowered to do what they do best. Another thing that's important here, I think, Content, training, and coaching. We have these three areas highlighted. Some folks who are looking at sales enablement, they're really focused in on the public-facing content that they're making available for salespeople to share with buyers and prospects, the slide presentations that they're giving and the analytics behind that. But there's also, as we'll talk more about, anyone who has a sales enablement role, more likely than not, are very much invested in the onboarding, continuous training, and preparation of the salespeople before they have those interactions. So making sure that you understand, a really well-rounded sales enablement strategy, we believe, really covers all of these bases.
Yeah,
and another thing, I'm sorry, yes, Amar, jump in.
No, I was just saying, I think this is a great definition, especially because it succinctly just outlines what I think are the four key pillars of enablement, right? And I think there's more, but I think, Brendan, you've hit the nail on the head that these four pillars are really, really the frontlining ones that I think we need to focus on.
Yeah. And also, look at, salespeople and frontline sales managers, you can see on the third line here. When people think of sales enablement, they think just about, your mind naturally just goes to the sales rep or the account manager, and rightfully so. But you have to, sales managers, those people on the front line that are managing and guiding reps towards along these sales journeys, they need enablement too. And if they're neglected and they don't have the training or they don't have the resources they need to guide, manage, and coach their salespeople more effectively, then your overall sales enablement strategy is going to suffer. And then finally, powered by technology, and we'll talk a little bit about that later as well, how using specific technology can help support success in these areas.
Yeah, great point. Let's move to the next slide here. I'm just going to forward one slide here. When we talk about sales enablement, folks, this is a growing field. And I think Brendan has hit the nail on the head at the start there where he said, ultimately, people are just starting to pay attention to this. Now, when we look at this, just look at the data, right? I think, Brendan, you basically provided this, but I'm shocked to see how many people, compared to just a couple of years ago, are actually now going into this field. Do you want to talk about that, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it's funny, and I don't know. I'm sure we have some marketing professionals on the line too. I kind of always compare sales enablement to sort of what we saw in content marketing several years ago, where it was something that companies always did, but they didn't really have a name for it. And then around, I think, 2011 maybe, people started to write books about the term content marketing, and then from there, people started hiring specific dedicated roles, and all of a sudden you started to see people with content marketing titles, and then there was content marketing solutions and software out there to support them. I've seen a very similar thing in sales enablement. It's not like companies weren't training and enabling their salespeople before, but over time, as that term started to become a more popular term, it also started to become a more popular title and dedicated role and function that companies were investing in. And we're seeing that reflected, in the research that organizations are doing. We're seeing it reflected on LinkedIn, 4,700 people with the word sales enablement in their job titles. And that doesn't even include folks who have variations such as sales productivity manager or sales readiness leader and things like that. So the investment is there, and the investment is starting to catch up with the terminology. And now what we're also seeing, is again, technology that is being made available, and resources that are available now to support that dedicated function. But it's definitely something that is on the rise, and it's been on the rise for quite a few years now, and it's only going up.
Hey folks, listen, I want to just drop a quick note to all of you listening. This is an interactive webinar, so please don't think that you have to save your questions till the end. If you have questions, please, I kindly request you send them in. There's the question box there. Drop them in there. I will be moderating and taking them, and Brendan and I can kind of go back and forth on this. Now, just some exciting developments that have happened, right? If you look at Serious Decisions and CSO Insights, two of the leading names in our industry, I'm sure you'd agree. If you look at the priorities, when they've surveyed sales enablement and you look at the priorities, social selling or social media usage, which is a euphemism for social selling, I would argue, these are really ranking high. Now, we've at Sales for Life, we've been on this journey for about 5 years. This was certainly not the case 5 years ago, nor was it the case for even 3. I would say it was just starting to percolate 2 years ago. So again, if you're seeing the same trends, if you're wondering, if you're hearing from your sales and marketing leadership on, hey, we got to empower our reps on social, I'm seeing some buzz and activity on LinkedIn, these are all outliers of the same phenomenon, right? So if you're experiencing this, it's not new. So why do I say this? Because I truly believe that there is a runway advantage that the early movers will absolutely have. There's Of course, this early mover advantage is kind of blown and overhyped at times. But folks, I'm telling you, I've been in this for 5 years, and I can tell you with definitive, um, with almost a definitive answer that those that are getting in early to social selling are absolutely benefiting. And how do I define benefit? I'm talking about net new generated incremental pipeline and revenue, right? Net new generated income, pipeline and revenue. So ultimately, I think when you think about sales enablement, you have a huge role to play in making this a reality and giving your companies a very strategic edge, right? I see questions are coming in. I am going to take them one by one. But before we do that, I want to talk about why is this happening? Why is social selling starting to rank top? Well, at Sales for Life, we've got, our original research that we've done with over 1,000 B2B buyers. And here's what we're seeing that, social selling makes you hit revenue goals. 78% of social sellers are hitting revenue goals versus 38% of non-social sellers. I think the proof is right there, right? If we look at the velocity of pipeline, I think this is every sales manager's dream that, hey, give me leads that I can close, but close faster. Social actually hyper accelerates this process. And we know this by talking to buyers that it has a much higher likelihood of ROI. So ultimately, when we look at social, it's not social in and of itself. That's the magic bullet. I think that would be I think that would not be an accurate representation, but something interesting is happening that because sellers are now joining buyers, all in accessing information together, albeit in different ways, both sides are winning. So essentially, imagine your buyers on one side of the spectrum getting access to so much information compared to even 10 years ago. Social sellers, i.e., salespeople that are using social effectively, now when they're joining the party, they're able to provide information to speed up buyers in that decision-making process. This is an extremely powerful thing, right? When you think about it. So, Brendan, I want to kick off, what you can do as enablement professionals or just as sales leadership, for instance. What can you do to get started?
Sure. So, and I think, we're going to talk about a lot of different things over the next few slides that are helpful in terms of getting salespeople to use social more effectively. And just to kind of go back on the slide, a couple of slides previously looking at how social selling has become such a top priority for sales enablement. Amar described, the value that organizations who are doing this well are seeing. That's one reason, certainly. But another reason why it's a priority here is because, you could argue that these research firms are identifying the fact that a lot of salespeople aren't particularly effective at social selling or aren't particularly skilled in using social media effectively in terms of buyer engagement. And so yes, on the one hand, it's very valuable to folks who are doing it well, but part of the reason why it needs to be a priority is because a lot of people aren't doing it well. And what can sales enablement do to train them up and get them up to speed?
Yeah, that's a great point. I really like that point for sure, Brendan. So basically, what can people do? What can people do to start with the really simple stuff?
Yeah, let's start with the simple stuff, especially from a sales enablement perspective, where you have a lot of things that you need to enable your salespeople to do. Starting simple. One thing that is just, every company should have just from day one, having a social media policy on day one. And you can even have a social media policy specifically for your sales team. And that's just, really look at it this way. You have a new sales hire walking through the door, and you need to get them onboarded and up to speed quickly. Make social part of that process. From day one, they can at least see this document and understand, what the company's brand identity is around social, and understand that they are now representing the company from a social media perspective, even if it's not a working document that they're accessing every week. This is about getting salespeople on the right foot on social media when they join your team, and understanding that this is how we approach social. This is why we believe in it. It's important, and yes, it's a priority for us. And that's just a simple thing that every organization can put together and have in place. So when a salesperson walks in on day one, they have their materials, they have all of their onboarding pieces, they're meeting with HR. This is one of those things. This is that first step to get them off on the right foot.
And then how about this, right? Just helping salespeople look good on social.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, you could say LinkedIn for a lot of salespeople, it could be their most valuable, especially B2B salespeople, could be their most valuable social selling tool. But you have to be able to use it more effectively. And to use it more effectively to start, you have to look good. You're representing your brand. So if you look at a lot of, salespeople's LinkedIn profiles, yeah, that's not exactly always the first impression that you'd want them to make. You want them to be the first impression they make on LinkedIn should be the same type of first impression you'd like them to make when they're walking into a live sales meeting or conversation. What do you want when they're doing that? You want them to look professional. You want them to sound professional. You want them to have the acumen and understanding to be able to describe your solution or your service and offering accurately and provide a value-added conversation. And so you want to do the same thing on LinkedIn. So one of the things you can do, one of the things that I've helped salespeople do is, create a sort of cheat sheet for LinkedIn. Be like, okay, first, this is how you guys write a headline. This is how you guys write a title in a way that actually symbolizes value. This is how you write a description of the company and your role in your summary section. Here is content that you can that you can take and share and have visible on your LinkedIn profile to fill it out, to tell a better story and a more engaging story about your solution. And here's how to do that, and make it very easy. I mean, in some cases, the salesperson just has to copy and paste, and then what's the result? Now their LinkedIn profiles look more professional. They're telling the right story, and even maybe more importantly, they're doing so consistently.
Yeah.
And because message consistency obviously is a very, very big thing, and it's a huge piece of sales enablement, also sales and marketing alignment. So, getting together and getting a common agreement on this is what we want salespeople to be saying and sound like, and this is what we want our sales force to be saying on LinkedIn and how they should be representing our company. Create a cheat sheet document for them and give it to them, and then they have that resource, and then you can ensure, hey, okay, now they're all sounding good, they're saying the right thing. That's step one. You also want them to look good. You don't want that headshot to be a picture from Uncle Jack's wedding or from a dark bar or from a cookout or something like that. Get them some nice professional headshots. Sales enablement can help set this up as well. We're very fortunate here at Brainshark. We have our own in-house design team and a photographer who can take all of our headshots for us. And we work with the sales enablement team to set up time for salespeople who need new headshots taken. We do that for them, and we send them over for them so they can use them on their LinkedIn and social profiles. We do that the same for when new salespeople join the company. So we make sure that everyone, looks professional, sounds professional on LinkedIn. Of course, I understand not everyone has, is as lucky as we are to have that in-house resource, but still, it's something worth investing in. And as a sales enablement person looking to enable your sales force to look and sound better on social, that's a simple thing that you can do and put together for your sales team. Get some professional headshots taken for them and get a regular cadence of that.
Yeah, Brennan, all great points. Let me say this, folks. If you need a cheat sheet, write this down, okay? Email us, because we actually have a lot of different types of cheat sheets that you can access. So if you're looking for just a quick start on this, because Brennan's points are spot on here, right? Get that cheat sheet from us. I want you to email us. Email one of my colleagues. His name is Dan, and his email is Daniel, Daniel, @salesforlife.com, right? So it's a very simple cheat sheet. He can just send it to you and rock and roll. You'll be off to the races. Now, quick thing on this, on the second point here about LinkedIn profiles. So Brandon has presented the upside. I want to present not the downside, but I want to present a bit of a doom and gloom scenario. So bear with me here, okay? And I really think you got to put yourself in the shoes of the buyer. It's one thing to say, yeah, you want to represent your brand, you want to sound consistent with others. Those are all great points. I get it. But there's actually a bigger risk here if you don't do this. And here's the risk.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get your salespeople to take their online presence seriously, think about what their customers are going to think. Think about what your customers are going to think. Ask yourself, does your customer really care that your salesperson was 180% of plan last year, or that they've been on 5 President's Clubs trips in a row? So all of these amazing sales accomplishments that we talk about in sales, these are great. Salespeople should be proud of them, of course, but it doesn't matter anymore, right? Our LinkedIn profiles, and here's a bold statement for all of you, our LinkedIn profiles no longer belong to us. They are now the exclusive property of our prospects and customers, which means that everything that you say and do on your personal LinkedIn profile should help your desired buyer. And if you don't do that, then I have to question, why do you have a presence online? So everybody's LinkedIn profile today is technically your own personal website. So imagine how you would handle your personal website. Imagine your company's website, right? Your company's website doesn't brag about all of its awards. It talks about how it's going to help customers. Your salespeople's profiles should have that same philosophy completely embedded in its DNA. All right. Last point. I hope you're enjoying this, by the way. If you are, please let me know. Go on the chat box and let me know if you're enjoying this so far. Last point, Brendan, you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say again, the point Amar just made is actually fantastic. And I was actually talking to my colleague Rachel about this presentation yesterday, and she made the point even if you're not making social media work for you, it could still be working against you. And I couldn't say that any better myself. And I think that's really the essence of what Amar you were talking about there. It can have some drawbacks if you're not making this investment in as well. So point number 3 here, never underestimate what your salespeople don't know. So we're talking about, cheat sheets. Again, we're talking about the simple stuff. A lot of salespeople, they're just not seasoned in social media. And it sounds silly to say seasoned because you just assume everyone is using social media and Facebook and Twitter. But there's a lot of folks out there who you don't just assume they know what a hashtag is. Don't just assume they know how to take a piece of content and embed it into a LinkedIn post and share it. It sounds very simple, but again, just don't underestimate that. I've had many times where I've sat down with a salesperson. It doesn't mean that they're, that they can't do this. It's just that they haven't done it before. It hasn't been a part of their personal, life, hasn't been a part of their professional lives. And I've sat down and I've actually showed them what a lot of people who are more, well-versed in social media consider pretty elementary things, and just walked through it with them, and it was just all new to them. And that's going to be the case for a while. I mean, you're going to have a lot of salespeople who just don't know, very basic social media terminology. And if they don't know that, they're going to be lost immediately, and you're not going to be able to get to those more advanced, sort of more cool aspects of social media that they can use to use social more effectively. So again, have a cheat sheet available. Have a short video presentation that's part of your new hire training, as part of your overall formal curriculum, just to be like the basics of social media. It may seem simple, but I wouldn't underestimate, how much a lot of your salespeople don't know. And it's your job to help them get there, because if they're not there, they're not going to be able to do some more advanced things with social that can really help them along the way in their tenure at your company.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'm going to use that as a segue to kind of go to the next slide here. So as you kind of, as enablement or as sales leadership or in a marketing capacity, wherever you are, if you're being charged with kind of enabling your sales team on social selling, on social media, I think these are the 3 main things that you need to think about as you develop a program or even something tactical like cheat sheets, as Brendan mentioned, right? So how do you prepare for social selling effectively, right? Like, how do you actually do this? Again, this is where you're going to have to start thinking about things like what are the curriculum assets that I'll need? What are the cheat sheets that I'll need? What are just generally the assets that I'll need in terms of people, process, and technology to get social selling started effectively? That's number 1. Number 2, by the way, I have a follow-on slide that kind of matches with this, right? So bear with me for a quick second. The second point and the second pillar is, what skills do they need to be successful? Now, I'll give you an example, right? Some of you may not know this, but there's over 40 unique ways to prospect on LinkedIn, right? Now, of those 40, you may only know a handful. Let's say you know 3 or 4. That's fine. Start there. But of those 3 or 4, is there one that is very specific to the type of job function you're enabling? And by job function, I just don't mean sales. I mean, is it an inside sales seller? Are they full cycle? Are they just customer success or managing existing client accounts? Are they focused? Are they sales engineers? Are they channel reps? So you're going to have to figure out what are the core skills they need, and then start mapping specific social ideas for them to practice on more of a daily basis or more of a routine basis. Okay. Third pillar, where do you start in enabling the journey? I fully believe that the slide before this, where Brendan made the excellent point that you've got to start with the basics, I think the last slide, folks, that's gold. If you're asking me, Amar, I've not done this, I need to start somewhere, I would absolutely recommend taking Brendan's advice and starting on the points we talked about the last slide. Number one, make sure you have a policy in place. Believe it or not, and I know this is going to sound shocking, but salespeople, and I'm one of them, I am allowed to say this, they don't take direction that well. Okay? So make sure that you have a policy in place. Otherwise, your brand is going to go awry very quickly online. Okay? And if you want horror stories and funny stories, email me after. I'm happy to sit down with you and share that with you. So I would say, again, from a 30,000 foot view, start with the end in mind and really focus on these three core pillars. Now, if I were to switch this in a different kind of visual, this is what I would say. You have to learn how to map the narrative for social selling enablement, right? So think of this as three things. Now, a lot of you are learning professionals. This slide will not seem new to you, but learning is only about 10 to 20% of the challenge. So, and I'm going to say this in a very delicate and diplomatic way, but I think a lot of us in our community are spending way too much time and putting way too much effort on the entire project and thinking learning is enough. Learning is actually not enough, because application and ongoing reinforcement, that is your jackpot. Okay, learning is 10 to 20% of the fun. Application is 20 to 30% of the fun, and reinforcement is 50% plus. All right. So as you design your program, again, more considerations. Now, if you don't know how to do application or how to get application going, that's fine. Start with learning, but you are going to have to figure out. And if you need help, there's great, like we're a resource, right, to give you advice and advisory on that. But ultimately, learning, application, and ongoing reinforcement, this is your ticket to an extremely successful, and I'm just going to say program, whether it's social selling or not. All right, folks, if you agree with this, if you disagree with this, if you think this is good or not, please share your thoughts on the chat box or on the question box. So Brendan and I are going to work this slide together, but ultimately, when you talk about enabling social selling, I believe it's with tech and process together. You can't have one without the other. Okay, Brendan, you want to take the enablement side?
Absolutely. So yeah, I think coming up with what is it that you want your salespeople to know and what you want your sellers to be able to do. We talked about some of the basics, and Amar alluded to some of the different prospecting techniques on LinkedIn and on some of the social platforms. Identifying what are those things you want your sellers to know, and putting that into first, a formal curriculum. You have sales enablement, sales training, sales onboarding. You have formal courses and curriculum that you are giving your salespeople, and you can use, and sales enablement technology is designed to support just that. For example, you can use sales enablement and learning and readiness technology to develop learning content, to develop formal learning environments that salespeople can access via an on-demand learning portal and you can certify that they have the skills that they need to sell more effectively. You can do all this stuff with sales enablement technology from a training perspective. You can send out video-based challenges to encourage them to practice and actually be able to see, okay, hey, let me see how you would go about, doing X, Y, Z from or to pitch this new product or whatever it might be. And they can send back a video that you can actually see how they do it and provide feedback and notes to help improve their performance. There's all these things you can do with sales enablement technology to help develop the content that salespeople need to sell more effectively, to deliver it in a way that they can either access it just in time as needed, or they can be enrolled in formal courses and curriculum. You can make sure that everyone in your team is viewing the things that they need to do, and then also just certifying and validating that they actually have retain this information and they actually are going to be able to apply it when it matters most, and that's when they're actually interacting with buyers. So you can do all this stuff with sales enablement technology. Now take social selling and make that a part of that strategy. Make social selling a part of your onboarding for new hires, a part of that content and those courses that you're putting together for new salespeople as they're joining your company. Make social selling resources available for salespeople to access on a just-in-time basis to refresh themselves. If you're a sales enablement leader, one of the trickiest part of sales enablement, or one of the really core components, I'd say, is around communication. Communicating to the salespeople when there's resources available to them and letting them know what's new and letting them know that there's something here that you're going to find valuable. At Brainshark, we send a weekly sales enablement newsletter that has all of the latest content and resources and training information and product updates in this newsletter for salespeople to access. And we'll send it'll have new things in that newsletter, but it'll also have existing things that we just want to make sure reps don't lose sight of. Make social selling a part of that. Make it part of your regular sales enablement communications. And all of this content and all of this training and all of these learning resources can all be housed in a sales enablement solution in a way that reps are using every day to get better. But a lot of the things that you're training them on, maybe it's a sales methodology, certainly it's product messaging, and things like that. But make social selling a part of it. We've seen that it's a high priority, and the question is, where you get started, and that's where, that's where using then social selling solutions and working with social selling experts and talking to folks, for example, from Sales for Life, can really help you get started there. And if you have trouble, finding your footing on social selling, and that's the reason why you're not making it a part of your overall sales enablement strategy, then there are resources out there to help you get there. But the fact is, if you have a sales enablement solution, if you have a dedicated sales enablement function and you're using technology to support it, you can build social selling into that learning and readiness strategy, and you should.
Yeah, all great points. I'm gonna just tackle this, folks, from a completely different angle, if you will. But it's two sides of the same coin, okay? When you look at social selling, I truly believe before you get into this, make sure your leaders are on board. Now, sometimes, and I know, again, this is going to be shocking to some of you, sales leadership or commercial leadership is not going to get behind social. All right. And the reason is because, quote unquote, it's not proven, right? Now, as much data as you present to them, and there's a ton of good data out there, this is let's just say this very delicately, this will take time. All right. You are going to press up against egos. You're going to press up against people's knowledge set, etc. So take this slowly if you need to, but ultimately realize that this is the future. And I'm going to digress for a little bit, but John Chambers, the outgoing CEO of Cisco, this was last year, I believe, when he retired. He gave a talk to 25,000 people. This was his partner community, and he basically said to them, 40% of you in your companies will not be around in the next 10 years. You'll be out of business. And the reason is because you refuse to become digital. You refuse to acknowledge that your customers are going digital. So it's a matter of time. And I know that's really harsh, but hey, this is the reality, right? So I think that you've got to start social selling with getting leaders on board. If it's full buy-in, awesome, high five. If it's milestone check-ins where they need to see certain things happen, get that agreement. Put an SLA in place if you need to. But you got to get leadership involved. I think the challenge with a lot of social selling programs, and we have the good fortune of seeing thousands of them now worldwide, is the ones that are failing, and I can tell you this almost without a shadow of a doubt, the ones that are failing are the ones that don't have leadership involved. So do yourself a favor, put in that extra time up front, make sure that the buy-in is there. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say when it comes to process and social selling is, listen, this is not, grandpa's social selling methodology, right? This is not the methodology. Like I'm not going to name names, but you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you look at some of the biggest sales methodologies that are out there, they haven't really changed that much. In fact, just for giggles, I went into the latest methodology of one of the big ones out there. I would call them a top 3, and compared that with what they had in the 90s. There was barely a 10, maybe 10% is even too much. There was barely a 10% difference in content and curriculum. That's what the environment is for all of us. That's what we've been raised in. But the challenge with social is radically different because social is constantly changing. For instance, LinkedIn is changing about twice a year, whether it's a major change or a minor change. There's probably, little changes beyond that we're not even seeing that well, right? Facebook is changing, Twitter's changing. So if you want your reps to use this platform and you're creating curriculum, my gosh, there should be a change management policy in place. This, I'm going to tell you though, this is tough. So you're going to have to make a really calculated business decision here. Do you train your reps on extremely simple stuff and forego some of the pipeline and revenue acceleration opportunities that comes with more kind of change management or more complex software? Or do you actually invest time, money, resources, people, process, and technology into full-blown change management? This is a very cultural decision that you and you alone are going to have to make in your business, right? And lastly, have a simple onboarding process with lifelong learning. Guys, these are really tactical tips we're giving you, okay? So I hope you're absorbing this. I truly believe, again, for social selling process, these are the 4 critical bullet points you really need to really know. Okay. Now, if you're going to enable content on social, I'm basically going to fly through the next couple of slides here. Okay. But essentially, if you are going to start this journey, I would really recommend you ask yourself why. So content sharing, Brendan talked a little bit about it. I talked a little bit about it, but ask yourself, why are we sharing content? So why don't we do this? Listen, we've got a good group amongst us. We've got about 100 folks here with us, right? Why doesn't everyone send in their answers on the question box? I'm going to give everyone about 20 seconds. Submit your answer. Why do you think sharing content is a good thing as a salesperson? I just want to feel out everybody in the room and make sure that, everyone's kind of radars or everyone's GPS are all aligned in the same direction. So I'll give everyone about 20 seconds. Why, as a salesperson, do you want your reps to share content? Okay, so the first answer, answers are streaming in, guys, so I'm going to pick a few good ones here. So we kick off with, it helps increase brand awareness, drives new contacts and sales pipe. Giovanni says it provides value for prospects. Sandy says, Amar, it creates brand awareness for knowledge sharing. Sandy, big high five on that. Jean says, it makes me a subject matter expert, knowledgeable, trustworthy. Lisa kind of says the same thing. Marco, very similar around educating customers with new trends. Carl says it promotes teams. It has a reach that goes beyond the sales rep. Trudy, high five, sister. I love that answer. That's really, really good, right? So ultimately, guys, listen, all of you know why you should be sharing content. I'm going to give you one other simple reason, backed by data. So our friends at LinkedIn did a study about 2 years ago, and they asked 1,500 B2B buyers. Okay, 1,500 B2B buyers. They said, hey, what attributes do you look for in your version of the desired salesperson? I.e., what does your ideal salesperson actually look like? 92% of these buyers came back and said, I prefer dealing with someone that's known as a thought leader. Okay, now I'm not saying that sharing content is the only way to become a thought leader, guys, right? What I am saying, though, is that it is an incredible way in this new digital age to begin to exert your knowledge. At the bare minimum, if you look at some of the salespeople in your company right now, they are experts. Like, there is no other way to say it, right? They've been there for a while. They're just good learners. They know the space well. They can speak about it articulately, but there's a problem. They're not talking about it enough, right? And in between their face-to-face meetings, in between emails and phone calls, that's not enough time to educate someone. So you've got to get out there and you've got to educate the market by sharing content more effectively. Brendan, what are your thoughts on this? Do you kind of agree with this, and what do you think of this LinkedIn stat?
I think it's a fantastic stat, and I absolutely agree with it. I think that you want to be a trusted source of information, right? And I think that buyers are more likely to buy from people and companies that they trust. And so becoming that trusted source of information means that, showing and representing yourself as someone who is an expert in your field, an expert in your area, and an expert in your market, and can actually solve the problems that your customers are trying to solve. And sharing content on social media is a way to do that. And another thing too that I really like, and I think some of you folks who answered Amar's question alluded to this. We're talking about how all this content that you can share on social educates the market. It also educates your salespeople. Your marketing team is creating great blog content and ebooks and all of this information about ways to use your offerings and ways to improve, have better success with whatever market you're selling into. And salespeople now, by sharing it, by being made aware of it, by pushing it on social, hopefully are reading it as well, and they're educating themselves, and they're not just looking like thought leaders, they're actually becoming thought leaders. They're actually becoming subject matter experts because all of this great content that they're sharing is also available to them, and they're learning something too. And I think that's something that it's a really big value item that sometimes can be forgotten, but I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, fully agree. Now, folks, we have one more slide. I'm going to let Brendan tackle this because these are some really, really juicy tips. Brendan has been testing and experimenting at Brainshark for a while, and he promised me, Amar, I'm going to include some of the juiciest tactical tips on getting other folks started on what works. So, Brendan, I'm going to let you to this, and then, folks, what I want you to do is start sending in your questions, and we're going to go directly to Q&A, all right? So Brendan, the floor is yours.
All right, really quickly, if we're talking specifically about sharing content on social media, the key is really making it as easy and simple as possible for your sales team. So one of the ways to do that, we'll just go through the bullets real quick. Raising awareness of new and relevant content with regular communications. We have a weekly email that we send out. We call it our weekly top 5, and you can see an example of it right here that we send out. And it's basically a list of all the new content that our team has been created over the past week, new blogs, videos, podcasts, ebooks, whatever it might be, that we want to get more exposure. We want to make sure our sales team is aware of, and we make it easily shareable to them. So we send that out via email. And as you can see in the email, and we'll look at the second bullet here, we don't just say, hey, here's a new blog post. We actually go that extra step of actually pre-writing a tweet with hashtags, pre-written hashtags in them, and pre-written tags, pre-writing a LinkedIn message. So all they really have to do is look at this stuff, and they can just copy, paste, and start sharing that stuff out. And again, with the spirit of making it as easy on them as possible. Back to the first bullet real quick, and also just finding different ways to get that information out there. If you're a Salesforce user, you might use Salesforce Chatter, internal social sharing network to make people aware of new content and resources. You might have other internal communication methods at your company. Think about the ways, all the different new and creative ways that you can let salespeople know about the content that is available to them, and also, again, making it really, really easy for them to share it. And then the third bullet, another way to make it really easy is to just have it done automatically. We've also worked on ways where you can use different solutions, social media solutions, to actually help salespeople set up a feed. So whenever a new blog post is published, it's automatically shared out on their network. So you're getting the more of that increased brand exposure. I mean, this is really like air cover, right? It's not exactly social engagement, but if you're looking for more of that exposure to your content, again, there's nothing easier than having a salesperson set that up and then not have to think about it, and that content's being shared automatically. And also, just thinking about, what are the stories that marketing isn't thinking about? Marketing should be talking to sales, because sales are the people that are actually talking with buyers and prospects. They know what the challenges are better than anyone. They should, because they're hearing them firsthand. So that communication between marketing and sales on what those stories are and what those new angles are and what those new challenges are, that they're hearing directly from prospects and customers, those are stories that can be developed into content, which again, reps can then be sharing out to others on their social networks. But if they're part of that content creation process, if this is their story that they work together with you on, they're going to have ownership over that story. They're going to be more committed to sharing that stuff out, and the quality of your content and hopefully the stories that you're telling will resonate better when you're taking the steps to do that. And you can even get customers involved as well. Getting customers to share stories about about your solution and getting reps to engage directly with customers on stories and content that your marketing team has created, it's all good. It's all engagement. So encouraging them to do these things and really breaking it down in very simple ways is just, when you look at one thing, one of these bullets, it seems really simple. Collectively, this should all come together in a way that makes it really easy for reps to not only be aware of the content that you're making, that you're creating, but also sharing it very easily and knowing who to share it to and how to share it with them. So these are just a few examples of the things that I've had experience with and some success with, and things that you should certainly try too if content sharing on social is a priority.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in here and just add this, right? I think for me, my favorite point here is point number 4, creating a content committee. As an enablement professional or as an inside sales or any kind of sales leader today, it's imperative that you have your ear to the street and know what your customers are saying. And I'm sure if you're on the front lines, that's probably easier. What I want you to do, though, is I want you to communicate that directly with others in the organization. Now, what I'm advocating for is a committee, a congress, if you will, inside your company where people come together from many different areas: marketing, sales, enablement, even senior leadership, and talk about the things that are happening in the market right now. And trust me, one of the simplest ways to create content, write a blog on customer objections. If someone has said to you, hey, you know what, this solution that you're talking about doesn't meet my company's regulatory requirements, and you keep on hearing that over, write a blog on that, right? So I think the ability to have everyone network together is magical. I think having salespeople, giving salespeople a voice is truly amazing, and they'll feel more compelled, as Brendan said, to share the content as a result. So folks, I hope you really enjoyed the content. What I want to do right now is I want to get to the questions, okay? So let me kind of just take some out here. So I want to take one from Carl. Carl's asking, have you heard about The Lost Art of Closing by Anthony Iannarino? Carl, the answer is yes. Carl also asks, how do you feel about the just do it philosophy? Carl, I'm guessing you mean with respect to social selling. So Carl, I love the just do it philosophy. I think that it's better to take action than be inert, right? But I think also, Carl, you've got to plan a little bit. Okay, I'll have you become the judge because you know your company, you know your culture. But ultimately, I would say a little bit of planning actually helps in a long way. Virginia has a great question here. And Virginia, sorry, I've been sitting on this for a while, but I wanted to get to it right now. So Virginia says, Amar, I completely agree with what you're describing. We are wrestling with many of the same challenges. I wonder whether anyone has found a good way to get salespeople to share their success stories around social selling quickly and easily. I hate to slow them down on their sales activities, but they will believe each other more than any other source of info. Any thoughts? Virginia, absolutely. Virginia, I'm actually going to give you a cool, neat little trick. And Virginia, if you need help on how to enable this or kind of like some tidbits and advice, open invitation, reach out anytime, and I'm happy to spend time with you, okay? So we actually get our clients to go through something called Social Selling with the Sharks. So it's a contest that we design that anyone that goes through our social selling program, at the end, whoever generates the most sales opportunities or the most wins, we take the top kind of submitted success stories and we put them into a contest. And we try to do this live. If not, we do it virtual with webcams on, Virginia. But essentially the judges and the panelists that are the judges are, senior sales leaders, senior marketing leaders, someone from our company, et cetera. And everyone's kind of judging, and there's a criteria that they're being graded on. And then there's prizes at the end. So Virginia, if you're having a hard time kind of figuring out, well, how do I get them to talk to each other because I want the message to permeate and kind of spread far and wide, that would be one of the best and easiest ways. Make a contest out of it. I know it sucks, Virginia, but yeah, you probably are going to have to pony up some cash behind that effort or some prizes or something, but that's clearly one way to do it, okay? So
I would
Virginia,
jump into
go ahead.
I would jump in too, Amar, just real quick on that. Our customers, we talk a lot about the value of peer learning and learning from your peers, and we agree it's a very, very valuable thing for salespeople to see, what's working for the other folks at their organization. Our customers will do things where they'll send out, video challenges and say, tell us tell us how you won the deal when selling this product or X, Y, Z, and salespeople will send in video submissions, short, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, just describing something. And these can be chosen as the best ones to be shared as and highlighted and featured in as part of our sales enablement communications, to be accessed via their sales enablement portal, that sort of thing. And so our customers do things like that, and that's a perfect example is to be able to do something like that around social. They could send out a challenge. What are some of the success stories that you've had with social media? And even if you are in an organization where salespeople aren't using social frequently or super effectively, chances are there's one or two or a small handful who have had some success doing something, and maybe it was something really simple, but that's a value lesson worth sharing. So again, using sales enablement technology, our customers have been able to do things similar from a peer learning perspective, and there's no reason why that couldn't be applied to social selling as well.
Yeah, and Virginia, I would say one last thing, kind of mirrors what Brendan has said too. Virginia, consider embedding social selling stats directly into your company sales scorecard. So if you're measuring dials, for instance, if you're measuring email sent or however you're measuring your sales output, right? Consider grabbing some sales metrics from social selling and embedding that into your overall scorecard, i.e. give more visibility, and where visibility is and where leadership stands is where the company will likely just follow, right? That actually is a perfect segue into a question that Shelly's asked. And Shelly's asking, Amar, how do you track ROI from social selling? So Shelly, this is actually one of my favorite topics. I won't have time to go into details too much today, Shelly, but here's what I can tell you. I think most people are measuring the ROI of social selling completely incorrectly, right? I'm actually going to challenge a lot of people and your existing belief systems right now. I'm going to push back. If you think that social selling on its own in a silo needs to be measured, I don't think that's the correct way of looking at it. That's like saying, imagine 20 years ago when the email was brand new in the world of companies, right? Forget sales, but just companies overall. Imagine someone came to you and said, hey, I'm not sure if I want to implement email. Can you just run a program for me and show me the ROI? I mean, no one would come today and say, can you show me the ROI of the cell phone? So social is accepted. I think the question, Shelly, that needs to be asked is the following, respectfully. I think the question is, can you live without LinkedIn, or can you operate without it, right? Like, what do you want LinkedIn or don't you? If you can get along just fine without LinkedIn, then I think that's fine. That's one way to look at it, Shelly. The second way is this. There is a proper methodology, and I'm happy to give you ours, Shelly, if you want. So if you want, contact us, okay? After the fact, email daniel@salesforlife.com. We'll just email you very quickly. We have a beautiful asset on this, and it will show you how to get your metrics aligned to social, okay? There's actually a framework that we follow, okay? Brendan, maybe you can take the next question. It's from Christine, and she's asking, hey, you mentioned reusing marketing materials as content. Do you suggest any specific types of content to create solely for social selling?
So I was referring to really like the marketing materials that your team is creating, just from a thought leadership perspective, is always great. Always great assets for social selling. I don't know if I would necessarily describe it as being repurposed. I think it should just be it can be part of your overall sort of brand awareness strategy and content sharing strategy. And when you look at it that way, I guess I would say, use your sales team as a marketing channel. Right? You create content, your marketing team creates content, it creates thought leadership content, might create product focused content as well, of course. What are the channels you're using to get that out there? You're using email, you're using social media from a marketing perspective, you're using your website, you're using digital display ads and all these different things. Well, use your sales team as a marketing channel as well, because they have networks, and chances are the networks that they have on social, particularly LinkedIn, are a lot of those people are either current customers or prospective buyers. So, those direct connections will able to see that content as well if you can use your salespeople as a channel for the marketing content that you're creating. So that's kind of how I would look at it. I wouldn't look at it necessarily as repurposing, but I kind of look at it as the great content your marketing team's creating. Your salespeople are a channel for getting that out into in front of more eyes of the people that you want to see it.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And one last point to that, which is this, right? That when your salespeople start sharing your content, there's a great study done by Nielsen, Nielsen, the ratings company. It's a little bit old, but I think it still holds true today. It's from 2013. They said that, people, customers, buyers are much more likelier to believe a message from a human being than a company. Right? So if there's a way for someone to, I'll give you an example. If I'm buying a car today, right, and I tell Virginia, for instance, says I'm looking to buy a car. Here's a great TV ad from Nissan. Versus me, who's her friend, who says, Virginia, you should really go check out this Nissan. It's a great car. Who do you think she's likely to actually believe? Right? So I think just the way the world is digitizing so fast, brands are out there. I get it. But if you're in marketing or enablement, you have a beautiful opportunity today to use your sales team as a massive distribution channel. Okay. So, guys, I think that is it for today. I want to thank Brendan for being here. I really want to thank all of you as well. Listen, if you need any of those cheat sheets, if you need those frameworks, etc., please email my colleague Dan. His email is daniel@salesforlife.com. I want to thank all of you for being here. Have a wonderful and positive day, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.